Welcome back to ASEAN in Focus. The ASEAN Integration Economic Blueprint envisions the establishment of a single market and production base, a highly competitive economic region, a region of equitable economic development, and a region fully integrated into the global economy. Among the components identified are improved market access within the region, investment facilitation, establishment of a single aviation market, and financial integration. Financial integration involves the banking sector and the financial markets. In this connection, there is a need to look into the condition of the Philippine banking sector and financial markets. To help us tackle the challenges of the ASEAN economic integration, we are honored this afternoon to have with us in the program one of the foremost economists of the country, the former Director General of the National Economic and Development Authority and former Socio-Economic Planning Minister. He is a former member of the Monetary Board of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. He has his PhD in economics at the prestigious Stanford University, where he also served as a university fellow in the 1970s. He is also a full professor of the University of the Philippines and served also as a visiting professor of the Kobe University in Japan in 2010. He is currently the chairperson of the Development Academy of the Philippines, my boss. He is a distinguished Mr. Cayetano Paderanga. Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you very much, Loy.
Okay. We go directly to the questions. The first question is the Philippine economy ready for ASEAN economic integration?
Well, in some sense, you're never ready for change. ASEAN economic integration will change some of the fundamental ways by which we do business and trade with our ASEAN neighbors. In that sense, many people would rather stay with the status quo.
Okay. So, stay within their comfort zones.
We stay in their comfort zones, but at the same time, there's a lot of promise in having a much bigger market, having more access to resources, exactly what you had said earlier. And this is the promise of ASEAN economic integration.
So there's really no turning back at this point?
Well, the way we do things in the ASEAN is we agree to agree. Yeah. And I think that the agree to agree has already been done. We are now working on the details. We would like to bring our relationship with our neighbors at the economic level on a higher plane. Yeah. And this is what everybody is looking forward to.
Okay. One of the areas that needs to be addressed, of course, is our financial market. So what are the implications of ASEAN integration to our Philippine financial markets?
Financial integration actually means that funds, capital and money funds can flow more easily across borders. And there are several levels. You have long-term capital funds. This would be foreign direct investment, including the facilitation of that. Then you have shorter-term funds flowing. And then you have the trading funds, which up to now has been done to a very large extent among banks. And then you have this issue of, or the area where people can deposit in other countries much more easily. So the integration of this means that you are essentially looking at one large financial market. Although before people think where they will deposit, by nature, central bankers tend to be cautious. And it's just the nature of their work. So I would think, or I would expect that the details, the steps that will be taken will be closely watched by the central banks of the region, and there will be a lot of discussions, and things will move in a gradual, if inexorable manner. But it will be, they will have to think, because central bankers are always worried about big changes and therefore shocks and disasters.
So do you think our central bank is really ready for the integration, the implications of the integration?
Well, things are going to be, there will be changes in the regulations, the standards, and this will be discussed with the other central banks in the region, and that will probably proceed step by step.
What about our commercial banks, our commercial banking sector?
Yeah, the commercial banks, I'm sure, will be looking forward to easier ways of doing business, going across borders much more easily. But at the same time, they will also have to consider the fact that that will also be true of other banks coming into the Philippines. This is all true of the capital markets. The ideal or long-term ideal of capital market integration is that a Filipino can just buy a bond in the Thai financial market and vice versa. So, in a sense, companies can also raise bonds and sell their stocks in other stock exchanges and financial markets in the ASEAN. It will make it easy for the resources to flow between countries, and this will always be good. But of course, there will be transition costs. The markets have to be ready. They have to standardize their rules, and they also have to know that at least at the very start, they may not be able to predict exactly where the funds will flow, and there might be some momentary shocks that people will have to be careful about.
You were talking about foreign direct investments. So what are our chances for increased foreign direct investments when ASEAN integration comes?
Well, people say that ours is small. Ours is small relative to some of the comparison countries that you would want, Indonesia, Thailand, for example. Even Vietnam, I think. At the same time, since ours are small, there is no other place to go but up. And there are many suggestions as to how to bring that, pick it up. And most of the suggestions really have something to do with the way we do business here in the Philippines. The rules that we have for investors, not just foreign investors, including domestic investors. The regulations and all of the permits and licenses that they have to get. Apparently in the Philippines, it's a relatively long process relative to
we
some
really need to do something
countries.
about that.
Yes,
and do you think the government is doing enough to, to ease access?
Well, having been there,
yes, you were there.
I know that at least this administration, maybe the other administrations, have been trying to do that. But once there is a code or sets of rules, you don't just change one and think that that will be enough. You have to start thinking about what are the other rules that are going to be affected. So it actually takes long and tedious as well as very detailed efforts to do that, and it takes a long time.
What about the urgency? I don't think we have the luxury of taking the process longer anymore.
That's true. In fact, I suppose for our own domestic investors, the comfort is that everybody, including the government, including local governments, will have to do things at a faster clip, because otherwise the funds are going to go somewhere else. Even our own funds will go somewhere else if it's easier to do business in the other parts of the ASEAN.
So do you think we're doing enough to, to facilitate access right now? Because it's 2015 already, and the investors are coming in.
Fortunately, I'm no longer in government. You'll have to ask. I'm just kidding, but you can always do things better. I mean, it can. But I think there's an honest effort to try to improve things. We have, I think the National Competitiveness Council has been looking at all of this and then finding out what can be done away with, including, I think, starting this year, already publishing and ranking cities according to business friendliness.
And the ease of doing business.
All of those things. And now people will be benchmarked against each other. I think that's going to make a very big difference in the way people behave.
I would just like to reiterate a previous matter we discussed earlier. How do the Philippines financial services sector fare when they compete with those in the other ASEAN member states? You were saying, in fact, that our banks are smaller?
Actually, if you look at normal indicators that are often asked, like the NPL, non-performing loans ratios, NPAs, the capital adequacy ratios, and so on, actually our banks look good. I mean, they're essentially close at the norm, it may be even a little bit above. The difference, I think, or the issue that we may have to look at is the size.
Yes, the size.
In business as well as in other things, all other things being equal, size can be a big difference.
And individually, our banks are relatively smaller compared to our neighbors.
Our banks are smaller, and that's also related, if not very closely intertwined, to the fact that our companies also tend to be smaller.
Our companies are smaller. Even our big companies
are
smaller.
Even our big companies don't really stand out when you look at the ASEAN picture.
Okay, okay.
So this is related, again, also to the size of our capital markets. It has something to do about the opportunities that have been here in the Philippines in the last few decades, and also related to the resources that we have been able to mobilize.
Yes, yes.
This one could actually improve with the opening up, being able to go cross-border, but that would mean that we would be left behind if we don't move fast.
So we should really move fast.
I think there is need now to look at what are the steps that will be done.
Okay.
I'm sure the government is already looking at this and is trying to find out.
Let's pray that the government's really doing something about this.
Well, like you, I'm a very prayerful man.
Yeah. Okay, one final question. What does this all mean, the financial services sector integration, what does this all mean to the common Filipino?
Okay. If we are able to do things right, in fact. I mean, the whole basis for going into this is that in the end it will be better for everybody.
Yes.
In fact, business will become stronger, all business. For the people, the consumers, there will be more variety of goods, and they will be better quality, lower prices, because now you have many choices.
And then investments.
Then investments also will have many places. If you're an investor, if you have cash, and you have the whole ASEAN instead of just the Philippines, then you can choose the areas where you have better returns. Of course, there's going to be a transition cost. Our own productive enterprises will have to go head-to-head with the product of other countries, and this is true of almost all the things. And there will be a strengthening, but also a winnowing out of the weaker ones. In the end, we hope we will have bigger companies, more products, better quality, and consumers being better off. But going from here to there requires some transition, and there will be transition costs. And I think that's where we have to be ready. We have to know how to mitigate the adverse impacts. At the same time, help our own businessmen and consumers with regard on the shocks that they are going to feel.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Cayetana Padiranga, the chairperson of the Development Academy of the Philippines, and we hope to see you again tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, I'm looking forward to that.